In this video, I will show how to set up the transmitter and the connections to your flight controller. Here I have a T-Rex 700, and you can see that I've mounted my flight controller on the side frame, and the GPS is mounted up on the tail here. I also have my RC receiver up on the top there. You can see the top of the receiver there. Now, when powering the aircraft for the first time, you'll probably want to be sure that you have your tail rotor connector or your linkage disconnected, as well as your throttle linkage disconnected, just to make sure that you don't that it doesn't put any strain or binding on those linkages until you get all the endpoints set up properly within RG-Pilot inside the flight controller. But normally what I do when I'm doing at least the initial setup, I'll go ahead and just connect just through the USB cable here and not have any power going to the servos until I'm ready to do that particular setup. So let's go ahead and talk about the transmitter. So I've got my Futaba transmitter here, and you can see that I have the plane profile for my T-Rex 700. The reason I use the plane profile is because it's recommended, and you don't need the helicopter setup profiles that the transmitter provides, because everything is done in the flight controller. So it's easier just to use a plane profile in your transmitter, so that you don't have any of the swash plate mixings that are going to go on behind the scenes. And again, all the mixings for your transmitter, you should be disabled. You should have no sub trims set. All your trims for your sticks should be set to 0. And you really probably don't need any dual rates. And then you can set a switch for channel 5, which is going to be your I have my switch up here, which is my modes, my flight modes. And then you can also use a switch, which over here is my switch for my motor interlock. And that's so it keeps it out of the way so I don't hit it accidentally, but this is so I can start and stop the motors. You can also set another switch for arming and disarming, but I typically just use rudder arming. So now you'll want to set up your, also want to be able to set up your reverse, and so for each of your different outputs of your RC channels. And so for this guy, you can go then to your screen on Mission Planner, which is the radio screen that I've shown there. Or radio calibration screen. And in this screen, it allows you to see the outputs of your transmitter. So if I show my finger here, you can see that the pitch and yaw or roll I'm moving those, and you can see the bars are moving in the radio calibration screen. And so here you can then check to make sure you've got the reverse for each of the channels set correctly. So let's just start with throttle. And you see throttle on the right here. And so if I go up, the bar goes up. If I go down, the bar goes down. And that's how you'd like to see that move. And then for rudder, which is this guy or yaw down here, if I push to the right, the bar moves to the right. If I push to the left, the bar moves to the left. Same idea for aileron or roll. So here's my aileron stick. And so push it right, and you can see the bar goes to the right. Push it to the left, the bar goes to the left. Now pitch is a little different. When you push down on the stick or pull back on the elevator, you'll see the bar goes up. There's the bar right here. See, this bar goes up when I pull back or push down, and then when I push up or push forward on the elevator, that's when the bar will go down. And so you want to set up your reverse for the channels in your transmitter so that so the motions of the bars agree with what I've shown you. So you want to calibrate your radio, and make sure you calibrate. When you do the calibration, make sure you move all of your controls to their fullest extent to ensure that you captured all the full movements of all the controls and the full movements of each of the other channels that you've got mapped to a switch or a dial. Now lastly, as far as the transmitter and receiver is concerned, you'll make, and the way I was able to see these inputs coming through the controller was that I have my Futaba receiver and it's connected into my my controller here through the RC in port on the controller, and that's how you do that. For the Futaba, I use an S-bus receiver and then use the S-bus output to make as the RC input into the controller. Now, as far as the servers are concerned, for your swash plate, looking at the swash plate, this is a standard H3 120 swash plate, and you can see that there's the forward left, forward right, forward left, and rear. And so with these guys, I have them, or the standard setup is to put the forward left into servo 1 output for your flight controller, forward right into servo 2, and rear into servo 3. And then your tail rotor control, which is here, the actual servo is back behind there, but there's my control rod, that goes into servo 4. And then your ESC or your throttle servo will then go into the default output on the controller is servo 8. You can change that, but that's the default. And we're just going to show a default setup here. All right, so now moving back to the Mission Planner, we can look at the Heli setup screen. And you can see that the default functions, so here's my servo outputs from the flight controller on the left here, 1 through 8. And so you can then see that the defaults are motor 1 is for servo 1, motor 2 for servo 2, 3 and 4 also accordingly. And then, you know, it's not any, it's motor, they're, I guess, not, the namings aren't what you'd expect because they're called motors instead of like aileron, elevator, that kind of thing. But this is more the multi-rotor. It comes from the multi-rotor, and we just use motor 1 through 4 as the functions within Arducopter. And then you can see down here for Heli RSC, that is the servo output for the rotor speed controller. And like you said, that was where servo 8 output is what you connect your throttle servo or your ESC to make the output to those. Thanks for tuning in.